Joining us now with more insight on today's sentencing is host of Political Report and WGN political analyst Paul Lisnek.
Hi, guys.
Let's start with the sentencing.
Sure.
Let's say unconditional discharge.
Correct.
Now, no punishment, but that does make a big difference that he gets this, right?
One of the reasons that he's been fighting it is because it is a permanent conviction on his record. You'll have the opportunity to appeal it and all that. That will happen, but that may be a few years before anything comes of it. So he just doesn't want to know, because now he is the first president ever to be a convicted felon, agree with it or not, in terms of taking office. That's the difference. It was interesting with the judge today. He could have said, look, if you weren't going to be president, here's what I would have done. He chose not to do that. So basically, it was a very peaceful, quick proceeding. The president's, incoming president's still angry about it, but yes, it's a blemish on the record.
How is it that a felon can't vote for president, but a president who is a felon can be president, or a man that is a felon?
A felon can't also run for alderman here. I mean, it's just it's state rules. It's basically sort of saying what you can do and what you can't do. But the reason he can be president is because the Constitution says there's only 3 things needed: got to be 35, got to be born here, right? That's it. So any record can take you. You can be in jail and serve as president. So it's just the way the Constitution. There's no restriction on it. That's
well, sort of on a related note, the special counsel's report on the documents case and on the election interference was in the appeals court. Is that going to get released?
So it went up to the Supreme Court, and they said 5-4, you can release it, and we're going to let this go. So what's really interesting about it is there's 2 volumes, and as you said, Ray, there's the January 6th stuff and there's the Mar-a-Lago stuff. It was Judge Aileen Cannon who in Florida put a hold on everything. Now, I'm not quite sure why she did that, because she has absolutely no jurisdiction over the January 6th case, and she doesn't really have jurisdiction over the Florida case because she dismissed it. So why she was ruling, I don't know, but that got reversed. And from there, however, the court said, look, you can release these, but they're going to honor this 3-day extension she put on. So Sunday would be the first day we might see it. Now, Merrick Garland has already said he is going to release the January 6th report. We will see that.
First part.
But the first part, but they're not, he says, going to release the Mar-a-Lago part because there are still 2 defendants in that case for which the case continues. Now, here's the thing. If you want to see the report, and I'll be honest, I don't know what Merrick Garland is thinking, because on January 20th, those 2 other defendants are going to get pardoned. And at that point, the report could come out. Except it will be maybe Pam Bondi, Attorney General, or certainly the Trump administration. And so that report's getting dished. It's going away. So if I were Merrick Garland and I wanted at least the public to see what happened at Mar-a-Lago, so much is floating around, why doesn't he just dismiss the case against those 2? It's going away anyway. Then he could release both of those reports. He's still got time to do it, but he doesn't seem to indicate that that's what he will do.
You heard Shannon say most trials that are things that have been going on with Trump, it'll never go to court.
Right, it won't.
But what about Fani Willis now wanting to come back in Georgia to look at the case of the impropriety as far as voter fraud?
Listen, Trump was an absolute master in how he handled every one of these cases. It was the art of delay, and it worked and worked. Even today's case in New York, the sentencing, he was sort of like, no, we can't do it. I'm about to be president. But it would have happened last July. Delay. The Georgia thing you bring up, Micah, is a whole nother world. That didn't happen, and that got messed up, and that's through no fault or efforts of really the Trump team, except they called out Fani Willis on this affair she was having with one of the lead counsel she brings in. I mean, for there, it's the Hugh Grant line on Jay Leno years ago. What were you thinking, right? And Jay Leno said to Hugh Grant.
Right.
So, I mean, she messed it up. And even then, she fought it, and she could have resigned it. There's so many things that could have happened that would keep the case going, but it's ego. It's all this other kind of stuff. That case is pretty much done for, too, because it's not only her that's out, it's her whole team. So there are so many things that would have to happen before it starts up again, would not involve Trump at that point. It's not going to happen.
All those resources. Let's talk about ByteDance. It seems like this ban is going to go through, but ByteDance, TikTok, ByteDance does have some options here. What are they?
Well, so first of all, this is sort of interesting. So the court heard the case today. That's why we're talking about it. And it's all Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court. And it's worth pointing out that everybody thought the court was going to be all caught up with First Amendment rights and free speech, and that's what the whole TikTok thing is all about. That's not what they did. This court, we don't know what the decision is going to be, but this court suggested that their concern is national security, because we also know the other part of TikTok that's creating creating this concern is what information is China getting, and is this all intentional? It's a whole China mindset thing here, in action by China. So the bottom line is the Supreme Court is concerned about that. They seem to indicate through their questions today that they will actually keep this ban in place because of the national security concerns. But what's interesting about that is incoming President Trump said to the Supreme Court, don't do anything with this because I might strike a deal. That, by the way, is sort of unheard of anyway, that any president would tell the Supreme Court, let me handle this. But that being the case, either this court is, I mean, if you think about it, they don't have to rule until the end of June. So either they sit on it, but January 19th is the date that this ban takes effect. So one would expect that they will give some kind of ruling, even if it's a temporary ruling with regard to a stay. Something's got to happen by the 19th. And if they sort of say, well, we'll keep the stay in place, whatever, that's the nod to incoming President Trump. If they do some kind of substantive ruling and go with, no, this ban stays because of national security issues, that would not make incoming President Trump happy, but it still couldn't mean he couldn't strike some sort of deal eventually.
Let's come back local.
Sure.
Former Illinois House Speaker Mike Madigan on trial, we know, for his corruption trial. Here in the city of Chicago, something big happened this week, didn't it?
He took
testified.
a stand.
Yeah.
Micah and Ray,
that hardly ever happens.
Criminal defendants do not take the stand. Now, we all have a memory of one other recent criminal defendant who took the stand, named Rod Blagojevich. He ended up getting 14 years. And we have to remember, why doesn't a criminal defendant take the stand? The main reason is because they've got nothing to prove. The burden is on the prosecution. I think what happened here is that Madigan's thinking is, look, there's this image of me for, of who I am and all of that. I need to warm up to the jury. From what's reported, we know he's looking at the jury. We're hearing a lot about his personal history and about abuse between his parents when he was growing up and all this other stuff that I think he's trying to create a human component to this, so it makes it a little tough on jurors.
Will it work?
Well, one of the things he did was he opened a door, because by saying something like, oh, I don't use email I didn't do anything wrong and all of that, but there's apparently videotape that suggests that he was laughing with his co-defendant about these ComEd people who are getting away with murder here, not doing anything. So, there you have it. It could be one of those things that ends up to come back to bite him a little bit. I will say, typically when a defendant takes a stand, it's not a good thing, but he's Mike Madigan. He's not stupid. So we'll see how it plays out for him.
All right. Final few seconds. I guess we're going to run out of time. I want to talk about Jimmy Carter's funeral, but there were a lot of points to talk about that. But you did a marvelous job memorializing him as we were.
Well, thank you. I think, by the way, in a sentence, history is going to turn out to treat him far more well than it has in his recent years. I think there's a more
when he was in office.
Exactly. But even in those years after that, I think people are starting to look at some of the things he accomplished. Secretary of Education, Secretary of Energy, so many things that he didn't really get credit for, but I think now going forward he will. So coming up this weekend on Political Report, 9 a.m. on Sunday, we're going to have Representative LaShawn Ford's going to join me to talk about this whole Springfield hemp thing that's going on. We're going to talk about the relationship with Mayor Johnson and how he's involved. But next week, for our viewers who watch the midday show, some really interesting interviews I'll be doing. Monday, Kim Whaley is a professor. She wrote a book called The Pardon Power. What interesting timing to talk about the pardon power. That's on Monday at 11:45 a.m. And then Friday at 11:45, I'll be interviewing David Rubenstein, who wrote a book called The Highest Calling about presidents, but he was just given the National Medal of Freedom by President Biden, the highest civilian honor that someone could get. So we'll probably ask him about that too. But it's two really interesting interviews on the midday news, Monday, Friday, 11:45.
You're all over the place. Thank you, Paul.
Right with you. Thank you, guys. Have a good weekend.